Welcome back to the Calabash Diaries. Today, we journey to the rolling hills of KwaZulu-Natal, where the voices of ancestors whisper through the valleys. This is the birthplace of a mighty nation, the Zulu, a people of courage, order, and vision. We will uncover the genius of Shaka Zulu, explore the traditions that bound his people, witness the military power that shook southern Africa, and trace the Zulu legacy that lives on today. But behind the victories and legends lies a story of family, betrayal, resilience, and survival. The story begins with migration. The Zulu were part of the Nguni peoples who traveled southward from the Great Lakes of East Africa centuries ago. By 900 CE, they had reached the lush valleys of southern Africa, bringing with them cattle, iron smelting and farming traditions. Archaeological evidence showed early iron furnaces and pottery in KwaZulu-Natal. The first chief, Malandela, settled clans that became the Zulu lineage. The word Zulu means sky or heaven, signifying greatness. Unknown fact, Zulu retained the click sounds from San and Khoisan languages, proof of cultural blending. Our story begins in the rugged hills of southeastern Africa around the year 1787. Born to Chief Senzanga Kona of the small Zulu clan and his young consort Nandi, the child Shaka entered the world under a cloud of controversy. His birth was not fully accepted by his father's household, and in a society where lineage and legitimacy defined one's place, this was no small matter. From the beginning, the boy's life was marked by rejection. His father's wives and children mocked him, neighbors whispered about his mother's honor, and the children of the kraal refused to play with him, hurling cruel names that cut deeper than spears. But Shaka was not alone. At his side stood his mother, Nandi, proud, defiant, and unyielding. Oral traditions tell us she bore insult after insult with her head held high. When Senzanga Kona's household cast them out, she gathered her child and walked away, determined that he would live and live with dignity. Together, mother and son wandered from village to village, first among the Langeni, later with the Amtethwa. There they survived on the margins, dependent on the goodwill of others, often despised, and always reminded that they were outsiders. Yet it was in exile that Shaka's spirit hardened. The stories say he grew lean, strong, and restless. Herding cattle under the sun, he was taunted as the boy without a father's fire. Children jeered, warriors laughed, but Shaka answered with his fists, his spear, and above all, with silence. Inside he carried a fire that humiliation only fed. Zulu elders recall that Shaka was different. While other boys boasted, he watched. While they played, he studied. He learned how warriors moved in battle, how hunters stalked their prey, how leaders commanded men. His mother taught him endurance, hardship taught him cunning. As he grew, he came under the mentorship of Chief Dingiswayo of the Mthethwa, a man remembered for recognizing Shaka's raw talent. Here, Shaka was drilled in discipline and the art of command. Here, the outcast began to transform into a warrior who demanded respect. Praise poets tell us of a young Shaka who fought not just with spears, but with his very presence. He was quick to anger, quick to test himself, and unafraid of pain. They say he survived trials in the wild, fought wild animals, and returned stronger each time. Whether literal truth or legend, the message is clear. The boy who was shamed became the man who would not be denied. In every version of the story, the lesson is the same. Shaka's early years were forged in rejection and exile. His identity was shaped not by comfort, but by hardship, by taunts, hunger, and isolation. And out of those trials rose a fierce resolve that would one day shake southern Africa. The child mocked as illegitimate would become Shaka Senzangakona, the great Zulu king. Shaka introduced the Ikalwa spear, a short stabbing weapon that revolutionized combat. Regiments, Amabuto, were reorganized by age group, discipline above kinship. Training. Warriors ran barefoot for miles daily. Failure meant severe punishment. Under Shaka, the Zulu Kingdom became unstoppable. This period, known as the Mfekani or Difakani, saw widespread displacement as neighbors fled Zulu dominance or were absorbed into the growing empire. The early 19th century was a time of great change, when Dingiswayo, chief of the Mthethwa, and Shaka Zulu, the visionary, arose to unify fractured clans, challenge ancient rivalries, and later forge the mighty Zulu Kingdom. Dingiswayo, remembered as both a strategist and a statesman, reorganized the military of his people. Oral accounts describe how he introduced regimental structures that grouped young men into disciplined age-based fighting units. These regiments lived, trained, and fought together, instilling loyalty and unity. Shaka, who first rose under Dingiswayo's mentorship, revolutionized warfare in the region. He replaced long-throwing spears with the deadly Ikalwa, a short stabbing spear perfect for close combat. He also enforced the use of large cowhide shields, which allowed for tactical formations like the bullhorn, where regiments encircled the enemy. Together, Dingiswayo and Shaka led marches into adjacent territories, bringing clans under their rule. Oral traditions recount the thunder of warriors' feet across the land, entire hillsides shaking as thousands advanced in unison. When Shaka Zulu rose to power in the early 19th century, working first under Chief Dingiswayo of the Mthethwa and later leading his own Zulu Kingdom, he unleashed a period of upheaval in southern Africa known as the Mafeking, also called Difakan or the crushing scattering. There were people displaced, not just Zulus, but many neighboring clans, chiefdoms, and smaller kingdoms who were uprooted by the wars, migrations, and political reshuffling caused by Shaka's military campaigns. Smaller Nguni clans, Nguni-speaking groups in KwaZulu-Natal, were absorbed into Shaka's Zulu Empire, while others fled northward and westward to escape. The Ndwandwe rivals of the Zulu, once powerful under Zwide, were defeated and scattered. Survivors fled north, some eventually joining or founding new polities. The Swazi, Ingwan people, originally neighbors, were pressured northwards into present-day Eswatini. The Basotho, under Moshoeshoe I, sheltered displaced refugees in the mountains of present-day Lesotho, reshaping Basotho identity. The Tswana and many communities in today's Botswana and Lesotho absorbed waves of displaced people, altering their demographics and traditions. Ngoni migrants, perhaps the most famous displaced groups, Zulu, and related refugees fled far north, through Mozambique, Malawi, Zambia, Tanzania, where they established the Ngoni kingdoms. They carried Zulu-style military tactics and regimental systems with them. Why were they displaced? Shaka's military reforms, short-stabbing spear Ikalwa, disciplined regiments Amabuto, and encirclement tactics Horns of the Buffalo, made his army extremely lethal. Defeated clans were either absorbed or destroyed. Refugees fled with their cattle, spreading upheaval across southern and central Africa. The Mafeking reshaped southern Africa's demographics. Entire new states, like Lesotho under Moshoeshoe and Ngoni, states in East Africa, were products of this displacement. Oral traditions from Sotho, Tswana, and Ngoni communities still recall the fear and movement caused by Shaka and Dingiswayo's era. In short, the displaced Zulus refers to refugee clans and peoples scattered by Zulu expansion and the Mfekane, many of whom carried Zulu cultural and military influence across Africa. These wars were not just conquests, but also cultural shifts. Many captured people were integrated into the regimental system, spreading Zulu and Manthethwa influence far and wide. Archaeological traces, such as old battlefield sites, remnants of iron weapons, and settlement patterns, suggest the massive impact of these campaigns on migration, trade routes, and even agriculture. Even in times of war, rituals played a central role. Warriors were blessed before battles by diviners, who sprinkled protective medicines onto their shields. Songs and war chants, some of which survive today, carried both spiritual and psychological weight, binding men together before the clash of spears. These marches of warriors, the disciplined might of Dingiswayo, and the unrelenting vision of Shaka, reshaped the destiny of southern Africa. They left behind not only legends of conquest, but also the foundation of one of Africa's greatest empires, the Zulu Kingdom. The Zulu did not march into battle quietly. Every regiment had its own war song, composed to stir unity and terror. The rhythm of feet striking the ground mimicked thunder, a message to enemies. We are many, we are one. Zulu warriors would perform the ukusina, a powerful stomp dance before battle. They entered trance-like focus, unstoppable, disciplined, divine. The British later recorded the same effect during colonial wars. They sang as they charged. The song carried death in its harmony. Before the first spear flew, before the horns of the bull formation encircled the enemy, the Zulu warriors stood in silence, waiting for the ancestors to breathe upon them. War, for the Zulu, was never just blood and conquest. It was a spiritual covenant, a conversation between the living and the dead. Before any campaign, Shaka's diviners, the Izangoma, performed rituals at sacred rivers and under ancient trees. They invoked the ancestors with snuff, milk, and rhythmic chants, asking for guidance, protection, and victory. Each regiment, Ibuto, had its own song and ritual dance, believed to bind the soldiers' spirits together as one. They rubbed their bodies with protective herbs, intelezi, believed to make them invisible to spears and unseen by enemies. Shaka himself performed cleansing rituals after war. The blood of the fallen was washed with ritual herbs, and warriors were forbidden to see their families until they were purified. To fight without ritual was unthinkable. It was to fight without the ancestors. Cultural insight. During the height of his reign, Shaka restructured not only the military, but the spiritual order of war. He created a unity of spirit where ancestral faith, discipline, and fearlessness became inseparable, and when victory came, it was celebrated not just with song, but with thanksgiving rites, beer poured for the dead, offerings placed at sacred stones. To the outside world, it was the Zulu spear that conquered, but to the Zulu themselves, it was the hand of the ancestors that guided it. Every war drum that thundered across the plains echoed with their names, the unseen warriors who fought in spirit, long before the first spear was thrown. But Zulu power was not just in war. It lived in their culture and spirit marriage customs. Lobola, bride price in cattle, bound families together. Infidelity had severe social consequences, often resolved through cattle fines. They believe in Nkulunkulu, the great ancestor, and powerful ancestral spirits. Healers, Isangoma, diviners, and Inyanga, herbalists, guided spiritual and physical health. Fun fact: Zulu beadwork was a coded language. Colors and patterns told stories of love, longing, and family disputes. But greatness brings envy. By 1828, Shaka Sensanga Kona was no longer just a chief. He was the great Zulu king, a figure whose name was spoken with awe and fear across southern Africa. But with greatness came enemies. Oral traditions tell us that his own half-brothers, Dingaan and Malangana, looked at him not with admiration, but with suspicion and jealousy. After the death of their mother, Queen Nandi, Shaka's grief was overwhelming. He imposed strict mourning rituals on the Zulu nation. Cattle were not to be milked, seeds were not to be planted, and entire communities were forced into mourning practices that many thought excessive, even cruel. Oral accounts said this period tested the patience of his people, and more importantly, he gave his brothers the excuse they needed to move against him. The whispers grew louder in the royal kraal. The king has gone too far. The king is losing his mind. And so, on a fateful day in 1828, Dingain and Malangana struck. Oral tradition recalls that they lured Shaka into a vulnerable moment. Some said it was in his hut, while others said it was near the cattle enclosure. What the stories agree on is that it was sudden, brutal, and treacherous. The spears of his own brothers cut him down. The Zulu king, who had united tribes and reshaped the art of war, fell not on the battlefield, but to the blades of his kin. But death did not silence Shaka's shadow. When Dingain seized power, he struggled from the start. Unlike Shaka, Dingain lacked discipline and vision. Oral traditions often describe him as clever but inconsistent, easily swayed by fear and jealousy. He sought to rule through suspicion, and though he inherited Shaka's warriors, he could not maintain Shaka's unity. It was under Dingain's reign that conflict with the Voortrekkers, Dutch-speaking settlers pushing north, reached its bloody climax. The clash came to a head at the Battle of Encombe River in 1838, later remembered as the Battle of Blood River. Zulu oral memory recalls the day with bitterness and pride. Thousands of Zulu warriors, armed with spears and shields, charged the laager of wagons drawn into a circle. The settlers, protected by gunpowder and iron, unleashed a storm of bullets. The river is said to have run red with Zulu blood. Archaeology today supports those stories. The scattered remains of wagon wheels, musket balls, and laager positions have been unearthed near the site. They testify to the scale of that encounter, where Zulu bravery met European firepower. Yet in oral legend, the story doesn't end on the battlefield. Elders speak of Nandi, Shaka's mother, whose spirit was said to haunt Dingane. They tell of nights where Dingain was restless, hearing her voice in the wind. "You betrayed my son. You stole the fire of the Zulu." Some accounts describe strange omens during Dingain's rule. Cattle that refused to enter the kraal, warriors who claimed to see shadows near the king's hut, whispers that Nandi's spirit walked at dusk. These legends served as moral warnings. Betrayal of blood and injustice against kin would never bring peace. And so, in the memory of the people, Dingain's reign is forever bound to that betrayal. He inherited Shaka's throne, but never his greatness. Instead, his legacy became one of blood, against his brother, against his enemies, and against his own people. The spirit of Shaka lived on, not just in the songs of praise poets, but in the warning his death carried, that power won by treachery cannot endure. The 19th century brought new enemies, the British Empire. King Cetshwayo rose to lead during the Anglo-Zulu War of 1879. In the Battle of Isandlwana, Zulu warriors defeated a modern British army, an event that shocked Europe. And in the Battle of Rorke's Drift, fewer than 200 British soldiers held off thousands of Zulu warriors. Fun fact, Zulu shields of oxhide could deflect bullets at long range and confuse riflemen. Archaeology. Isandlwana still yields buttons, shields, and bones of the fallen. Despite victories, colonial power pressed harder. By the late 19th century, the Zulu Kingdom stood at the height of its reputation. The stunning defeat of British forces at Isandlwana in January 1879 had shaken the empire to its core. Oral memory tells us that the Zulu warriors fought with unmatched bravery that day, showing the world that no empire was invincible. But the British were determined. With reinforcements, heavy artillery, and modern firepower, they returned stronger than ever. The final clash came at Ulundi, the royal capital of the Zulu Kingdom, on July 4, 1879. It was there, in the grasslands under the African sun, that the might of the Zulu met the full machinery of empire. Oral traditions remember the scene as devastating. Regiments of Zulu warriors in their thousands, chanting war songs and brandishing spears, charging against a British square bristling with rifles and cannon. The sound of gunfire tore through the air, drowning out the rhythms of the war drums. The battle was short but brutal. The Zulu charged again and again, but the line of steel and smoke would not break. By sunset, Ulundi was burning. The British tore down the royal homestead, and with it the heart of the Zulu Kingdom. The monarchy was broken, the land divided into fragments, chiefs appointed and dismissed at the will of colonial officials. Oral memory calls this period Isikhathi Sobumnyama, the time of darkness. It was a time when the authority of the Zulu king was stripped away, and families were torn between loyalty to their traditions and submission to colonial law. Yet even in the darkness, the flame of continuity did not die. Hidden within the folds of everyday life, the royal family and trusted elders kept alive the spiritual rituals that bound the Zulu nation. Praise poets whispered the names of kings in secret gatherings. Ritual beer was brewed not just for family ceremonies, but as coded offerings to the ancestors of the royal house. Some stories speak of elders traveling at night to sacred rivers or mountains, offering prayers in silence, away from colonial eyes. Others tell of hidden initiation rites for young boys, where the king's praises were still recited, affirming that the spirit of the monarchy endured even if its throne was shackled. These secret acts of remembrance were not rebellion in arms, but rebellion of spirit. They ensured that even as the British declared the Zulu Kingdom dismantled, its heartbeat still echoed in cattle enclosures, family rituals, and whispered songs. And so, while the guns of Ulundi silenced a kingdom, they could not silence its soul. For in the shadows of the time of darkness, the Zulu people carried their kings in memory, and their future in hope. But the Zulu spirit never died. Today they remain South Africa's largest ethnic group, over 12 million strong. Cultural practices such as stick fighting, reed dance, umkosi womlanga, and Shaka Day celebrations still thrive. Modern Zulu musicians, storytellers, and beadwork artisans carry ancient traditions into the present. Fun fact: DNA studies trace Nguni-speaking peoples, including the Zulu, back to East African migrations, proof of ancient journeys that still live in their blood. The story of the Zulu is not only one of war and empire, it is the story of resilience, culture, and legacy. From Malandela to Shaka, from Blood River to Isandlwana, their history reminds us that power is not only found in conquest, but in memory, spirit, and identity. This is the Calabash Diaries. Our past is power.